That's the biggest argument I have against the monetary system. And free market economics is it's a complete hindrance because it needs to preserve establishments. You have to create the establishment to keep people employed. And whether you're conscious of it or not, you will fight anything that interferes. It's not only a competitive nature against other corporations that want to cut in on your action, it's also competitive against advancement itself, scientific advancement itself, and things that could basically make your industry obsolete. And there are numerous technologies and approaches out there that could make many of the current industries that are extremely powerful obsolete, and they will fight tooth and nail to make sure that never happens, to preserve their establishment. Okay, number 9. This seems to be a number of questions, so I'm going to try to break this apart. Regarding the forum, what is my overall impression, and do I get a chance to read what is posted? The forum is in and out. It depends who's posting. I don't really have an overall impression. I think generally speaking, most of the people that occupy the forum are engaged sincerely and want to do things and understand the direction. But there's also a lot of people that come in and out that clearly don't. Second part of your question, do you think your intended message communicated in your films is thoroughly understood by most members, excluding the Venus Project and the resource-based economy? That's an interesting question. The Zeitgeist film series has underlying tones of human unity, of critical thought, of questioning things around them that they find normality, of dealing with indoctrination. And I think most members that engage the forum, to extend your question, I think they get that from what I've seen. That's a tough question. It's completely opinionated, and I really just can't track what everybody thinks or does, so it's hard for me to really say equivocally. Continuing your question, do you think life experience more than book knowledge gives an individual better understanding of the issues you talk about? Well, life experience and book knowledge kind of go hand in hand. I have a problem with academia in the sense that it's a form of indoctrination through a kind of a rote learning schedule, but that doesn't dismiss book knowledge. So book knowledge, hence knowledge in general, whether it's from a book or not, is an important counterpart of life experiences, which the scientific method takes account for, because you're testing what you hypothesize. You take information, you evaluate a possibility, and then you put it to test. So yes, they go hand in hand. Okay, number 10, Peter, I was wondering if you could clarify once again the issue with the circular cities and their design, scope, and intent, in so much as they are designed as models of efficiency, but are by no means a mandatory construct. We still get a lot of people who wish to argue the issues. Once again, thank you. Okay, the circular city. Circular city is not a mandatory construct in the sense that it doesn't have to be circular. If anyone researches the Venus Project, there are many different, land configurations, if you will. The circular city isn't ideal because it's, imagine yourself on a Cartesian plane, you don't have any obstacles. Boom, you build a circular city because it's the easiest to move around in, and all the things that I actually talk about in Zeitgeist moving forward. Now, a lot of people, I will comment, seem to project into the cities as though it's some rigid thing, and that and they see some freedom in the crap that you see, like in Los Angeles, of this haphazard array of disorganization, and they think there's something romantic about that, and they see the circular city of nice, clean organization and efficiency as some, cold thing. It's unfortunate that people kind of think that way. I think efficiency is beauty. I like the way an airplane looks, because you can't have a bunch of weird ornaments on an airplane like a stupid car. I appreciate the integrity of efficiency, the integrity, the beauty of utility. And that's what this circular city really is. It's an artistic manifestation of efficiency. And I think there's something to be said for that. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, number 11. My question is in response to Z-Day 2011. What are your thoughts on civil disobedience to bring attention to the cause? Examples of Gandhi, reaching more people. I'm sure you're aware of these movements. I am just using them as examples of nonviolent actions that create great awareness. Well, listen, I completely understand that angle and appreciate it. As far as Z-Day 2011 is too soon. We're not going to engage in anything in a disobedience or active way. Well, first of all, unless it's extremely warranted on a per-case basis. As I said before, we're going for critical mass, and I don't see the merit of engaging anything that isn't on a global scale. Now, I know these are very radical statements, and in fact, I'm actually very hesitant to speak that way because people take hold of them and it sounds aggressive and misinterpretations fly. But as I've stated in the past in interviews, my vision of activism for the Zeitgeist movement is really, it's not standing in a free speech zone in America and yelling at a building. That's not what the Zeitgeist movement's going to do, at least in my opinion. I'm not going to dictate what everyone does, but as far as my suggestion of how to engage the system and to begin drawing attention to the Zeitgeist movement, the Venus Project, in the interest of a resource-based economy, it will be done so in very, very articulated ways in lieu of Martin Luther King and his civil rights process, and of course Gandhi. So absolutely I agree. But as far as Zeitgeist Day 2011, we're playing by the rules. We are simply having simple events while we gain more people. We're in phase 1 still, which is the process of gaining people. I hope everyone understands that. Okay, number 12. Hi, Peter. For reasons of clarity, has there been thought towards the introduction of a slogan for the Zeitgeist movement, as with the Venus projects, beyond poverty, politics, and war? Excuse me. No, there hasn't, but I'd be happy to hear some. I don't object to that idea. I try to keep things simple. I don't know. It's like having lots of graphics or having a trademark or things like that. It's just not really a territory that I'm big into. But if people want to present a slogan, go ahead and throw it on the forum or something, and who knows what could happen. Okay, number 13. Peter, is there any news on the movie Jacques would like to make? Not that I've heard of. I know there have been numerous scripts written by people. If people aren't familiar with that, it's Jacques and Roxanne, the Venus Project, have been trying to make what they call a major motion picture, meaning a high-budget, kind of Hollywood-style film to show elements of a resource-based economy, what it would be like. Now, I will comment, though, that Zeitgeist 4 is going to pick up that exact idea, but it's not going to be a Hollywood-style. It's not going to be a major motion picture, quote-unquote, in the sense that they're going for a multi-million-dollar thing. I'm going to attempt to do an art noir work that's very artistic, that's similar to the concept that they talked about, but on a much more lo-fi level, and of course still in accord with the nature of Zeitgeist in and of itself. It's still Zeitgeist, but to answer your question, no. Okay, I got to start moving more quickly here. Number 14. A lot of debate arises around the issue of transition, but I feel most of the debate should center around all facets of a resource-based economy. We should know where we want to end up before embarking on the journey to get there. Do you agree? Well, yes, of course. I completely agree. As far as the debate on transition, well, no one's a prophet, and I think many people that argue the transition or bring it up as some hindrance to our work, meaning that since we can't describe the transition, then it's not worth the energy, which is a complete cop-out. Just because you don't know how to get from point A to point B doesn't mean getting to point B becomes an irrelevant issue. So if anyone would like to hear a hypothetical that I brought up regarding the transition, and I do intend in the future to make an actual video presentation on thoughts on the transition, but there is a radio show about 3 or 4 shows back that talks about the transition. So please review that. In the end, the debate on the transition isn't a debate at all. No one can figure out what's going to happen. You're not going to get a movement in this direction without a certain amount of breakdown, which brings instability and chaos. It's very, very hard when you're advocating a system that doesn't have a political system to see how the political system can fold and mesh and change into an observational scientific system. Very, very, very complex stuff. But regardless, that doesn't change the need, and we are in the transition right now, which is the process of education, and that's certainly the first step, so I can certainly comment on that one. Okay, number 15. In your response to Steph, at the end you put an emphasis on the collapse. I think they mean Stefan Molyneux of Free Domain Radio. Put an emphasis on the collapse and how it will happen. Does this mean you believe it's likely to happen very soon? Could you maybe lay out the trend analysis you have been doing and what type of timeline we should be expecting? Well, the year that I often bring up is 2030. 2030 isn't just an analysis from me. It comes from many different sources as well. I've done my own trend analysis of different phenomenon, but I found that most of that analysis was already mirrored by other organizations that unfortunately don't get the press that they really deserve. If I was to summarize the issues of collapse, we have energy problems on the horizon. We have clean water problems which are growing. The trend of of reduced clean water, both for drinking water and use for crops, coupled with arable land depletion, coupled with the debt collapses and inflation problems that are occurring and are on the horizon, coupled with the trends of poverty, and I don't mean like the lowest echelon of poverty, which they claim has gotten better, but the overall rate of poverty, which has gotten much, much worse and doubled since the 1970s. You couple all these factors in, and you see a very, very bleak picture that seems to push an apex, if you will, to 2030. But I think instability will arise much faster than that. All it takes is a few simple triggers. My response to Stefan was more arbitrary, to be specific to your question, in the sense that whether it's a decade or a couple decades, I see this pending if the monetary system is held intact, if the market system is held intact. So it isn't the date that's really relevant. It's really just understanding the trend. Until those trends change, we're in a process of collapse. Until the trend of clean and drinkable water to be used for food and human consumption is reversed and we actually go in a positive direction, we're in a lot of trouble. Until the arable land depletion is reversed, we're in a lot of trouble. 99.7% of all agricultural food comes from arable land. If there isn't a push within the next decade to get renewables up and going very, very quickly to meet accelerating demand as the human population grows, we're in a lot of trouble. Nothing is matching up right now. Everything is in complete disarray. And as I've said before, the social instability factor with debt collapses of society, coupled with these growing ecological problems, creates a perfect storm. Not to mention the accelerating use of technology to replace human labor, which has picked up ever since this sort of Great Recession, as they call it, has emerged in the West, because the corporations know that corporations operate in cost efficiency, and humans are nothing but a commodity. They don't care, and they're too one-sided, too blinded to recognize that the more they mechanize, the more they drop purchasing power. So all of this stuff comes together in a very, very unique way. And even if just one of them was accelerating, it would be problematic. But we have all of these things coming together. And continuing the second part of this individual's question, quote, you said somewhere that our actual technology is 10 years more advanced than current technology, and somewhere else you said 100 years. Please explain how you came to those conclusions. I'm speaking of two different contexts. If I said something was 10 years behind, I was probably being specific to something, say within the medical establishment, actually, which goes back many decades. Or I'd have to think of the context. You'd have to remind me of what that context was. But the broader context, where I often say things are between 60 and 100 years behind or decades behind, relates to a number of different things, from, say, cancer treatment to the fact that the first electric car was made in the mid-19th century, like 150 years ago, that we have home construction methods, extremely wasteful, like the individual I featured in Zeitgeist moving forward, from University of Southern California, and of course Jacques' technology, what he's talked about for decades with respect to extrusion technology. He's making prefabricated homes, highly industrialized levels, super strong, all sorts of technology. So it's a huge question. I'd have to think, you'd have to give me a specific context. But all those basic things considered, and not to mention sociologically. I mean, social theorists have understood that the prison system is an atrocity a long, long time ago. It's just perpetuated. In fact, I would say that we are probably 1,000 years behind in the way we view society. The understanding of operant conditioning, the understanding that human behavior is influenced, the understanding that notions of evil. I mean, we exist in this draconian legal structure across the world that actually thinks people are just perfectly responsible and rational, and they understand what they're doing, and they don't. And an entirely new system, if it's going to actually relate to science, has to be created to deal with aberrated human behavior, what causes it. But of course, that's a gigantic subject. So I would actually change that statement to say we're probably 60 to 1,000 years behind, in all frankness, depending on what context you're looking for. Okay, number 16. What would happen to the art of magic in the Venus Project? And his question has to do with secrets and his ability to keep the secrets from people he's creating magic tricks for. Well, I appreciate your question.